So basically, I mentioned that I talk about objectives and key results a lot. That's my business. I really help. I work with scale up executive teams primarily to launch to communicate their strategy with objectives and key results. Objectives and key results, in case you don't know, it's a way of expressing a goal. It's the fundamental idea behind it. You have an objective which says the direction and the what we're trying to achieve. It's like laying out the target for the year. And if you have multiple objectives for your quarter, you're basically sort of explaining your strategy for the quarter in a few simple statements of these are the objectives we're trying to get to this quarter. The key results define success, and they're how you delegate the problems that you really want your team to be working on. So you might be saying with an objective, we're going to make the world's best search engine, and with the key results are going to be things like search relevancy score would increase from 93 to 94. The latency would decrease from 30 milliseconds to 25 milliseconds. The uptime will be maintained above 99.999% or whatever we have, and we'll increase the number of distribution partnerships from 7 to 10. And increase the number of page views from 10 million to 20 million, something like that, right? Whatever those are. Now, they might be the objectives that then help people understand what is it that we are doing, what is it that the problems that we're trying to address in our organization as employees of this organization, people in this team, what are we supposed to be doing in order to help become the best search engine? So that was a specific example. I guess I could have put that on the screen with text, but I like to use these blocks because in many ways, the way that I want you to think about this is as an abstract communication method, right? And what we're doing with OKRs, when we talk about OKRs, what we're really doing is turning vision into action. So in any organization, you have this long-term vision and strategy, and it's all about going to the moon. And it's about reaching the stars, and it's about how things, the strategy. Those wheels define a strategy there. So you have this long-term vision and strategy, but of course, your people in your organization have a daily plan of action, and so on a day-to-day basis, they're doing things like they've got to-do lists, they've got some sort of project plan, or a Gantt chart or whatever they have there. They might be having some sort of agile process, some sort of agile Scrum process where they're reviewing things every week. Maybe they're a Kanban, whatever it is. But there's a team with a daily plan of action that are doing things. And what OKRs do is they help connect these things together. They're usually quarterly objectives and key results. And so that's why we're talking about quarterly. How do you kick off your quarter well, right? So when you're kicking off your quarter, what we're doing with the quarter is we have a quarter. We organize ourselves by quarter, and most organizations, a quarter is a good period of time to organize by, just because it's long enough to get a lot of things done, but it's short enough to adjust things. What you're doing during your quarter is you have over here, you'll see the metrics and KPIs in your dashboard that you have. You're monitoring the dashboard. You're setting some sort of objectives and key results, which takes you towards the goal, takes you in the right direction towards the goal. And at the end of the quarter, you review your metrics and how you went on your objectives and key results, and you set a new key result for the new quarter, and goes in a slightly different direction towards a goal that maybe has moved a bit. Maybe you didn't go where you wanted to go. Maybe you've learned something new. And through the quarters, you do the same thing. So it creates this cycle of every quarter. We start, we do some work, we get more towards the goal, we learn more about where the goal is, we learn more about what we were able to do. And the OKR is a real communication mechanism to be able to say, this quarter, we're going to do this and try and achieve these things for this quarter, right? So you've done your 4 quarters, and hopefully you've made a target by the end of it, and you continue on through that cycle. Now, one way of thinking about this, what I want you to think about when you're thinking about kicking off the quarter is, what are you trying to do? Why are we kicking off a quarter? Why do we even... We're just working. We're working last year, now we're working this last quarter, and now we're working this quarter. And frequently enough, the stuff that we're working on is kind of the same stuff. What are we really trying to do by having this quarterly cycle and starting it out with OKRs, starting it out with goals? What we're trying to do is create a rhythm. You start at the start of the quarter by saying, these are our objectives and these are the key results. This is what success looks like. This is the direction we're going in, the objective we're trying to get to, or the series of objectives we're trying to get to. These are the key results we want to create. These are the definition of success. These are the problems that I want the team to be working on. This is what we need to solve for, right? We're doing that. We say go, and now people have some focus, some time to focus on their work. So there's focused work, and they're discussing the objectives that they're trying to do. They're discussing their daily plan of attack and making sure that the daily plan is lined up with the objective for this quarter. And they're doing that work. And then at the end of the quarter, you go, well, we've finished the quarter now. Let's stop. Let's assess how we did. Right. And then at the end of that quarter, you can then go back and set new objectives, right? So you go back and set some new objectives based on how you did. And just creating that rhythm of like, we start, we do some work, we stop. It really helps people to sort of not feel like they're in an ongoing just drudgery and in a machine of like turning the handle over and over again. They're actually doing work that gets them progress and gets them towards a goal. As a person in that organization, if I'm an employee, I get to take my contribution to those achievements and put that onto my CV. And now I feel like I've achieved something. So creating this rhythm, even if it's slightly artificial, creating a rhythm of like this quarter we're doing this, and next quarter we're doing that, creates the opportunity for people to feel like they're getting somewhere, to feel like they're making progress, and then maintains that momentum, right? Ironically, by starting and stopping, you maintain momentum. When you just keep going, you start to not realize that you're going anywhere. If that makes sense. When you think about this, the objectives are really about kicking off that quarter, and that objective, starting that quarter with the objectives, is really about having the key messages for the quarter. What are we trying to do this quarter? What are our most important things that I want you to think about, that I want you to be focusing on, that I want you to be working on this quarter? Right? That's what the objectives are. So when you're communicating these at the start of the quarter, you want to start out with saying, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. We have like a 4-slide deck here, which is like, this is what I would do if I was having a kickoff meeting. These are our objectives for the quarter. These objectives should set direction and inspire action. Hey, everyone, do you understand what we're trying to achieve this quarter in the broad picture of things, to understand what that is? Then we go in and we say, okay, key result for objective 1. This defines what success means for that objective. So when I say that objective, this is what I specifically mean. And I want you as a team to work on these things, these metrics. I want to move these metrics. I want to achieve that milestone, a customer visible milestone, right? So that's what we're trying to do for this objective. And then you do the same thing with the next objective and the next. And hopefully you have a small number of objectives. Like 1 objective is great. 2 is good. 3 is pretty good still, because it's still pretty focused. People can understand 3. It stays in their head pretty well. Often you need to have 4 just to cover all bases, the things that you really want to say, and it's starting to get a bit clunky when you have 4, and 5 really gets to be too much for most people, but some organizations have 5. When you go beyond 5, people will just forget. People get confused. You're talking about your key messages to start off the quarter, right? You want to be able to communicate. These are the key messages. This is what's really important for this quarter. You need to have a small number of key messages for the quarter. Otherwise, you're confusing people, right? Now, what are you doing with these objectives once you start? You kicked off the quarter by saying, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what success looks like. How are we doing? The next thing you want to do is listen, right? Do people actually understand what you're meaning by this? Do they understand what you're hoping to get to? Do they have questions? Do they doubt that this is the right direction? Do they have objections? Do they not understand it? Right? Whatever it is. And you want to try and listen to them, because by listening, you're helping to make sure that they understand. And by paying attention, by taking that time to stop and listen, ask the questions, you're emphasizing to them that it is important to you that these things are understood, and that these things are what we're doing. We're doing the objectives, but then after you've done that launch, you then need to go on and embed OKRs in communication. So you've done the quarterly launch here in the blue, the presentation. You send an email out with your OKRs, you put posters up with the OKRs, but then you don't just stop there, because if you stop there, it feels like, well, we've done the start and now we're just going with our normal work and no one cares. What you want to do is make sure that through the quarter people care. The ways to do that is to make sure that in the meeting agendas, we talk about the contents of the OKRs. How are we doing with this objective? Whatever your work you're doing, if you're doing work, it should be ideally related to the OKRs. If it's not, then either you're doing the wrong work or you set the wrong OKRs. So make sure that when you're having meetings, which should be about discussing the work, they also discuss the OKRs. When you launch something, put in your newsletter the OKR, the objective or the key result or the key results that this launch affects, and how this launch will affect those key results, because that really emphasizes to everybody what it is that we're trying to do, and how the work that they're doing links to the strategy of the company. And of course, what you really want is that every day when people are talking about the work that they're doing, they're discussing their sprint plan, they're prioritizing things on their Kanban board, looking at their project plan, just looking at their to-do list, which always has too much on it, no matter what's going on, they refer back to the OKR. They refer back to the OKRs and they say, well, what's really important for us? How do we make decisions that are best suited to what we're trying to achieve as a company, that are going to get us more to that goal? And so that's what you're aiming to do with this, and you're aiming to embed that. You need to launch the quarter well by explaining what you're trying to achieve, and then you need to continue on with that regular weekly check-in. And that weekly check-in is usually some sort of like weekly meeting, and it frequently looks like this. You would review the progress plans and problems in relation to the objectives you're trying to achieve. Now, This is sometimes reviewing the initiatives, the projects, but you always want to be linking those to how does that help our objective? Are we on track with this project? And are we on track with this project and how it's going to affect and us meeting the objective? How does this activity help? This project we're doing, this thing that we're working on, whatever that work is, does it help us to meet our objectives? Is there a better way to meet our objectives than this project? Like, do we have any ideas? Because what you're trying to do here is engage the team in thinking about how do I solve the problems that we've defined as the key objectives for the company for this quarter and those results that we want to deliver. How do we know that we're doing the right thing here? Do we have any ways of checking whether this is right? And then that's a really interesting question because it helps people to reconsider whether this is actually the right thing to be doing. Like, how do we know this is the right thing to be doing? How do we be confident about that? It's not just our opinions. How do we actually dig into that and get confident? Should we change anything about what we're doing? Like, are we doing the right activities and so on? And that's a really helpful action to take during that weekly process. Not necessarily every week to sort of, do we change anything? We're not throwing everything up in the air, but you do want to cause people to be assessing, are we doing the right things? Very rarely in most companies these days are you in a situation where you can say, we know upfront what the right things are. Usually this is more a matter of we have to start working and deciding to be doing the right things. And the reason for that is because in most cases you end up being just, there's too many things to do, and there's too many distractions, and there's many low priority things that seem high priority. There's lots of interruptions come in that are urgent but not important. It's a quick review of how to start a quarter with OKRs and what do you need to do with that.